Shalom, shalom. Today I'm going to walk you through a few of the words in Psalm 119, verse 1, and we're going to do a couple Hebrew and a Greek word study. Before we get started looking at some of the words in Psalm 119, verse 1, I wanted to show you a list of resources that can be used. There are certainly more to do Hebrew and or Greek word studies. The more resources and actual physical hands-on material that you have, it's always better to have the books. So in the top row, today we're going to use a Strong's Exhaustive Concordance, the Theological Word Book of the Old Testament, the Ancient Hebrew Lexicon of the Bible by Jeff Benner, which I would highly recommend that everybody have, a King James Bible. I use the ISR scriptures. You certainly can use whichever one you like to read from. Greek Concordance to the Septuagint by Hatch and Redpath, the Apostolic Bible Polyglot, and we will see some things from the eSword as well. The resources on this page are ones that we will not be using today, except for the Thayers. We will look at that just a little bit, but there are also ones that you would want to definitely have in your reference library for these word studies. The Englishman's Hebrew Concordance, the Englishman's Greek Concordance. Make sure they're the ones with the Strong's numbers. The Brown Driver Briggs Jacenius, the Thayer's Greek to English Lexicon, the Etymological Dictionary of the Hebrew Language by Klein, and the Etymological Dictionary of Biblical Hebrew by Hirsch. Again, these are ones we won't be using today, except just looking at the Thayers a little bit. The ones that were on the first list are really the ones that you want to consider getting in order to get started. Turning to Psalm 119, verse 1, in whatever version of the scriptures that you're using, again, I will be using the ISR. Blessed are the perfect in the way, who walk in the Torah, the Torot of Yah. So then we need to go compare it to the King James Version, because that is what the Strong's Concordance is based on. So looking at the KJV, we see it says, blessed are the undefiled in the way, who walk in the law of Yah. So we see the first word we're going to do there is in red. It is blessed, and it's the same word in both versions of the scriptures. So we go to our Strong's Concordance, again, that you can see pictured there. And we look up in the alphabetical section in the front of the book the word blessed. And we follow the list down, and you can see in the left-hand picture there, I have underlined Psalm 119, verse 1. And you follow that line across, and you see that goes to Hebrew Strong's number 835. Turning to the back of the Strong's Concordance, you will find there are two dictionaries. One is a Hebrew and Chaldee dictionary. The other one is a Greek dictionary. Whenever you're looking up a Hebrew word, you want to make sure that you are in the Hebrew Chaldee dictionary section. I myself have made the error before of being in the Greek section trying to look up a Hebrew word, and it just didn't make any sense. So as you're getting used to using the Strong's, continue to check that. So we see when we go to that Hebrew and Chaldee dictionary in the back, which is in numerical order by Strong's number, we look up the 835, and the definition is asher, from 833, happiness, only in masculine plural construction as interjection, how happy. And then you see a colon and a dash. Everything after the colon and the dash is more or less irrelevant. They are just words that English translators used to translate this one Hebrew word into. Sometimes when you see words after the colon and the dash, you may see up to 15 different English words they've translated it into. So the focus should be on everything before the colon and the dash, especially the words that are in italics. As far as the Strong's goes as well, Personally, I think it's better to have an older Strong's Concordance. There's the red cover one pictured here. I also like the blue covered one. You know, for me, while they may have updated some things because maybe they found some more evidence, I haven't seen that there's been that big of a difference between the old one and the new one as far as that's concerned. But in some of the newer ones, they've taken out the italicizing. And I just think the older ones, they're just better. So now that we've seen what the Strong's Concordance has to say about the word, I like to many times go to the Theological Word Book of the Old Testament, especially if you're not familiar with these words from really a lot of perspectives. It's a great place to just gather information and just kind of sort out what's what. So this word, again, was Hebrew 835. I suggest you have pen and paper and be writing down all your steps and numbers along the way. So starting in the back of the Theological Word Book, on page 1087, is a list of Strong's numbers in numerical order. So you find your Strong's number in the back of the Theological Word Book, and I have it underlined there in the first picture for you. It's actually on page 1090 in the far right column. You can see again in that first picture there's a yellow underline and it goes to 183A. So the front of the book is all in numerical order as well, and you find 183 and you go to A. 183 is actually on page 80 in this book. The root line of this word, it explains the root line of each of the words actually in the line. And so lots of times you'll get a couple pages of information of what an entire root line looks like and different verses as this word comes across in different contexts. It's just an all-around great resource. So I'm just going to read a little bit out of this root line in this book because it's like 2 pages long, just so you can get an idea what kind of information can be gleaned. The verb occurs in the qual stem only in Proverbs 9:6, go walk in the way of understanding. In the Peel it is used 11 times, with several nuances, of which the most prominent is to bless, called blessed, and it gives Genesis 30:13, Malachi 3:12 and 15, Job 29:11, Psalm 72:17, Proverbs 31:28, Song 6:9. Similarly, in 2 cases in the Pool, Psalms 41:2 and Proverbs 3:18. The relationship, if any, between qual to go and Peel to bless is not apparent. 2 derivatives each come from the meaning bless and to walk. There are 2 verbs in Hebrew meaning to bless. One is barak, the other is asher. Can any differences between them be tabulated? For one thing, barak is used by El when he blesses somebody, but there is no instance where asher is ever on El's lips. When one blesses El, the verb is barak, never asher. One suggestion to explain this sharp distinction, i.e. that asher is reserved for man, is that asher is a word of envious desire. To be envied with desire is the man who trusts in Yah. El is not man, and therefore there are no grounds for aspiring to his state, even in a wishful way. Similarly, El does not envy man, never desires something man is or has, which he does not have, but would like to have. Therefore, El never pronounces man blessed, asher. And that's actually a commentary by somebody else they've included in their book. It should be pointed out that when barak is used, the initiative comes from El. El can bestow his blessing even when man does not deserve it. On the other hand, to be blessed, asher, man has to do something. Finally, barak is a benediction, asher more of a congratulation. The former is rendered by eulogetos in the LXX, and the latter by Makarios. So it goes on, and it gets more specific into the word. Lots of times they will bring up things that are in the New Testament or things that you see it tracing to in the Greek. So again, it's just an all-around great resource to really get some depth that's come from over the years on a specific Hebrew word. And maybe another Hebrew word, as we heard, the other word for bless, barak, that is in the scriptures as well. The next resource we're going to use is the Ancient Hebrew Lexicon of the Bible by Jeff Benner. One of the best resources I have ever seen. I would highly, highly suggest that if you don't have one, that you purchase one. I will actually put a link in the description box so you can purchase this book specifically. Looking in this book, going to the back, starting on page 555, again are all the Strong's numbers in numerical order. So you simply find your Strong's number. And this one, 835, happens to be on page 556 in the far right-hand column. And you can see it's underlined there in yellow. It's 1480 CN. So here is some of that root line. The actual root line is starts on page 284, our word's on page 285. It continues to go on from there. This book has a wonderful outline already all set up for you. Mr. Benner also has a website that you can go look up and find just a whole plethora of information on Hebrew words, Hebrew culture, historical Hebrew. But this is the page from the book that has our word in it that we're looking at. And highlighted in red, I've put the sections that we're going to be looking at. I put the whole thing on here so you can see what a great outline it is. So we saw it was 1480 CN. So if we go to the bottom of the screen, we see the first red from the bottom is our N, and we always want to start at the lowest, the last level there, because that's our specific word. We see it's from right to left, an L, a shin, and a resh. Happy. One who is happy is one whose life is lived straightly. Something a little bit different than we've gotten so far. And then we back up a little bit to the C, which is the family, and we see the concrete is straight. A cord pulled tight is straight. And then when we back up all the way to the two-letter parent root, which I believe everything should be a two-letter parent root, we see the action is to tie, the concrete is cord, the pictograph shin is a picture of the teeth representing pressure. The resh is a picture of a head representing the top or beginning. Combine these mean press the beginning. Ropes and cords were usually made of bark and strips, such as from the cedar or the sinew tendon of an animal. The rope is made by twisting two fibers together. A single fiber is attached to a fixed point, the top, and the two ends of the fiber are brought together. One fiber is twisted in a clockwise direction and wrapped over the other fiber in counterclockwise direction. The second fiber is then twisted in clockwise direction, then wrapped around the first fiber in a counterclockwise direction. The process is repeated through the length of the rope. The twisting of the fibers in opposite directions causes the fibers to lock, press onto each other, making a stronger rope. The rope is used to tightly secure or support something, such as a load to a cart or the poles of a tent. Just looking at the definition of that two-letter parent root, you can see how this resource brings together the culture and the letters, the language that he breathed into one place. So we see reading from right to left. We have the ox head. The L means leader, power, strength, yoke. Then we have the shin, which is the two front teeth. Press, to, consume, sharp, destroy. And then we have the Resh, the head of man, first top beginning person. So we saw in our two-letter root that press, the beginning, were the two root letter words, the shin and the resh. Now we've added an L to the beginning. So to be blessed, to be walking straightly, to be walking a straight line is to be strong, because we're pressing that which was from the beginning, came from the head of man. It's going to be what's talked about through the entire rest of the psalm. So we need to keep in mind that while we're doing just a single word study here, it has to be in context. Context, context. Moving on to our next word in the verse, we see in the scriptures it read, blessed are the perfect in the way. But in the King James, we see it reads, blessed are the undefiled in the way. So we need to go with the word that is used in the King James. So it's undefiled. And looking up undefiled, I have it underlined in yellow there. We see it goes to 8549. Turning to the back of our Strong's Concordance, we see again the two dictionaries. We have the Hebrew and Chaldee dictionary and the Greek dictionary. Remembering that we need to look in the Hebrew and Chaldee dictionary when we're in the Old Testament doing a Hebrew word study. So, H8549, tamim, from H8552, entire, literally, figuratively, or morally. Also, as a noun, integrity and truth. Again, we see our colon and our dash, so everything after the colon and the dash is really something we're not concerned with, because they're just English words that have been translated to come up with this one Hebrew word. So now that we've got our Hebrew number, we can again go to the Theological Word Book of the Old Testament, and I don't have all the screenshots on here this time, but you can find the word in the back of the book on page 1124. Again, it's Hebrew 8549. And we see that tracing it in the Theological Word Book goes to 2522D, which is on page 973. So I'm just going to read you a little bit about what it says, again, so you can get kind of an idea what this resource will do for you. So we've got the root line here as they have it, the different words that are actually in this family. And so the overview, tamam, may assume an auxiliary function, e.g. in Joshua 3:16, the literal rendering, they were complete, they were cut off, represents they were completely cut off. With the verb's fundamental idea of completeness, Samuel inquired of Jesse, are here all thy children? 1 Samuel 16:11. The root tamam's most common derivative, describing an entire day, Joshua 10:13, or a whole and therefore healthy vine, Ezekiel 15:5. Mitam indicates soundness of flesh, Psalm 38:3. Tamim delimits Israel's sacrifices, which were to be without blemish, perfect in that respect, so as to be accepted, Leviticus 22:21-22, as types of Messiah, the spotless Lamb of El, 1 Peter 1:19. Speech, which is tamim, Amos 5:10, corresponds to what is complete, entirely in accord with truth and fact. And there's much more information on this word in this book. Actually, at the word tamim, it says complete, refers to animals which are without blemish, also translated as such related adjectives as full, whole, upright, perfect. It represents the divine standard for man's attainment. Again, there is so much more on that word and the words related to it in the Theological Word Book. Tracing it back to the ancient Hebrew lexicon, again, the Hebrew Strong's numbers start on page 555. And so we look up our Strong's number, which is H8549. And we find that on page 575 in the 4th column, and it tells us it goes to 1496, big B, little b. And that's going to be on a page that I obviously don't have listed on the slide, but it is on page 291. And you can see it there as it's laid out in Jeff Benner's book. Again, in red, we're going to start at the bottom, because that's our actual word, tamim, whole. When we go back up to the family root B, it's ta, mem, mem, from right to left, and the abstract is whole. When we go to the 2-letter family root at the 1496, we see it's the ta, mem. The action is to fill. The abstract is whole. Someone or something that is whole, complete, or full. One who is mature and upright as one who is whole. Looking at our letters on the bottom, from right to left, we have the ta, the 2 cross sticks. Could mean a mark, sign, seal, own, covenant. Then we have the mem, which is water, chaos, mighty, blood, cleansing. Who, what, where, when, and why. Because the Hebrews thought of the water as a place that was like a questioning word because they didn't know. Then we have the yod, which is the arm/hand, work, throw, make, worship. And we also have the mem then again at the end. And you can find great definitions, deeper understanding of how these letters and these words and these sounds of these letters came to be at the front of the ancient Hebrew lexicon. So when we're thinking about being without spot, without blemish, upright, and whole, we see we have been marked. We carry the sign of being under the blood. Then it was the temporary covering of blood in animals. Now it's the blood of Messiah. And we continue as we are without blemish to yod, do the works of that which would keep us cleansed, mem at the end. So we would be tamim, whole, perfect, without spot and without blemish. You have to have the blood and you have to be doing the works in order to be cleansed. So now that we've looked at 2 Hebrew words and seen the beauty and the depth of the language that Yah first breathed, let's trace back this word way from the New Testament. Looking in the scriptures at John 14:6, Yeshua said to him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. So we see that Yeshua is the way. When looking in the King James at the same verse, we see it's also the word way. So starting again in the Strong's Concordance, looking up the word way, we see at John 14, verse 6, which I have underlined. If we go to the right-hand side there, it's Greek 3598. So when we go to the back of the Strong's Concordance this time, we're not going to be looking in the Hebrew Chaldee dictionary. We're going to be looking in the Greek dictionary. G3598. Hodos, apparently a primary word, a road, by implication, a progress, the route, act, or distance, figuratively, a mode or means. Just like in the Hebrew dictionary, in the Greek dictionary, there's a colon in the dash, and we don't pay any attention to anything, for the most part, after the colon in the dash. Since we are doing a Greek word study from the New Testament, it's a good idea to pull out our Thayer's Greek English Lexicon. What you see on the screen is actually posted as a cut and paste from the eSword version. Having the actual book in hand, it has much more in-depth information in the book. So we see that Thayer's definition is properly a way, a traveled way, a road, a traveler's way, a journey, traveling, metaphorically, a course of conduct, a way, i.e. a manner of thinking, feeling, or deciding. So now that we've got some information from the Strong's Concordance and from the Thayer's Greek English Lexicon, we have our Greek number. Next, we need to trace back our Greek number to find out what Hebrew word this goes to. You cannot just say it's way in the New Testament, so wherever I see way in the Old Testament, it must be that word. That is simply untrue. One, we need to look at context, and two, we need to make a clear, concise traceback. There are two very helpful tools to do that with. One is the Apostolic Bible Polyglot, which you see on the left. The other is the Greek Concordance to the Septuagint by Hatch and Redpath, which you see on the right. I actually use both in conjunction with each other. The Apostolic Bible Polyglot, you turn to the back of the polyglot and you will see there is a lexical concordance. Everything is in numerical order by Strong's number. So our Greek 3598 is actually on page 233, and you can see how it's listed there. It shows us that our Greek word is in Genesis 3:24, Genesis 6:12, Genesis 16:7, and so on down the list. So every place where this Greek word was used shows up in the Apostolic Bible Polyglot. At the same time, I have open my Greek Concordance to the Septuagint. It's actually a 2-volume set. It does take some time to become familiar with the Greek letters, but once you do, this is just an amazing resource to have. So I've looked up the Greek 3598. It's actually in the second book. It's on page 962. You can see I've written 3598 actually in my book. I suggest if you do use this book, that every time you look up a word, you write down the number next to that section so you don't ever have to look for it again, because you will find some Greek words that have a little different endings and you have to kind of look a little bit for them. So the reason that I knew this was the word that it's supposed to be, number one, it is spelled the same in the Greek, but number two, I can see we've got Genesis 3:24 on the left of the Greek Concordance of the Septuagint picture that I took. We've got Genesis 3:24, Genesis 6:12, Genesis 16:7. So I'm seeing that we've also got the same verses, so I know we have a match. On the right-hand side of the picture of the Greek Concordance to the Septuagint, you can see at Genesis 3:24, it goes to the Hebrew word numbered 3a. So we go to above the red line and we see number 3a is a Dal, a Resh, and a Kapf. So we know when we go to Genesis 3:24, when we're looking at the modern and the Masoretic Hebrew, we are looking for a Dal, a Resh, and a Kapf. That way there's no confusion, because sometimes path and way might be in the same verse, and they're two different Hebrew words, yet the English word might be way for path and path for way. And that may be a little confusing to hear now, but you'll see it as you go along. This just confirms exactly which Hebrew word we're looking for. And again, just to stress the importance of context, context, context. As you can see in that section above the red line, there are 18 different Hebrew words that the Greek traces this one Greek word back to. So again, it's context, context, context. And the actual beauty of this tool is that it shows you how many times this Greek word goes to each one of those Hebrew words and what verse each one of those Hebrew words for this Greek word is used in. So you're not in the polyglot saying, okay, let me go check this verse, let me go check that verse, let me go check that verse to kind of see which words, Hebrew word or words it goes to. Right here in this Greek Concordance to the Septuagint, it is all laid out for you. So we saw one of the places that the word was used was in Genesis 3:24. Actually, in looking in that Greek Concordance to the Septuagint, you will see almost every time that this word is used, it goes to the same Hebrew word that's used at Genesis 3:24, the Dal, the Resh, and the Kapf. So Genesis 3:24. I've laid it out here in the King James. Sometimes you can get a set of scriptures that has the actual Hebrew numbers already in them, and that's great. But for those that don't have that, we go to the Strong's and we look up the word way. As you can see there on the left-hand picture, we see Genesis 3:24. Going across that column, we see it's Hebrew 1870. In the second picture from the book there, we also see that it's Psalm 119 verse 1. There's two little ticky marks, but if you trace that up, that also goes to the Hebrew 1870. Turning to the back of the Strong's, we see in the Hebrew Chaldee dictionary this time, because now we're back in the Old Testament, now we're back in the Hebrew, the word is dahrek, and we see that it is a Dal, a Resh, and a Kapf. From 1869, a road, as trodden, figuratively, a course of life, or mode of action, often adverbally. Then we see the colon and the dash, and we pay really no attention to anything after the colon and the dash. Again, a reminder for you to go to the Theological Word Book of the Old Testament and look the word up and get some more information on this Hebrew word itself. But we're going to go ahead and move on and look it up in the Ancient Hebrew Lexicon of the Bible by Benner. And in the back of the book, again, these Strong's numbers start on page 555, and they are in numerical order. So in looking up this 1870, we see that it goes to 2112N. 2112N, at the bottom in red, we see from right to left the Dal, the Resh, and the Kapf. A road that is walked, as well as the path of life. Going up to the 2112, again we see the Dal, the Resh, and the Kapf. The action is tread, the concrete is road. So looking at the letters in the word, from right to left, we have a Dal, which is the door. Move, hang, enter, open, back and forth. Resh, head of man, first top, beginning person. The Kapf, the palm, bend, allow, tame, cover, open, bless, offering. So we see this way, which is Yeshua, because he is the way, he is also the door. We are to strive to be entering the door. To where? Back to the beginning, back to the head of man, back to the way it was. By bending ourselves to what? To the very next thing that the verse says. Let's take a look at it. Psalm 119:1. Blessed are the perfect in the way, who walk in the Torah, the Torot of Yah. So here we see each of our words, first, second, and third line, strong, pressing that which was from the beginning, from the head of man. Blessed are the ones who are marked, are in covenant with the blood covering them, doing the works to bring them to their cleansing, because they're striving on the way to enter the door, who is Yeshua, back to the beginning, by bending their will, by walking in the Torah of Yah. And so we have these wonderful resources and this beautiful language, everything from the El to the Ta, that Yah has breathed for us to see the depths of who he is and what he has said. So, if you seek her as silver and search for her as hidden treasures, then you would understand the fear of Yah and find the knowledge of Elohim.